I think I really lost myself into this proving that I'm as good as every other man out there. Like, I had a lot of insecurities. Why am I doing this? Is it really bringing me peace?
Today's guest is a founder, entrepreneur, leader and mother. She champions consciousness, education and health. Joining us on the podcast is Nadia Zaal.
I was told I wasn't able to have children. That actually propelled this whole journey that I've gone on what is feminine energy. What is it to be fertile and receive life? You are so in your masculine. Like, you can't even receive a compliment, Nadia. Like, how are you going to receive a baby? I actually fell pregnant like 5 months later.
What did it take for you to get there? What did you have to let go of? You've openly kind of questioned the mainstream education model. Why do you believe that the current education system is failing our children?
What is the purpose? Okay, employability. 80% of the economy is changing. Like, what are we preparing them for? Do we even need schools?
All right, balancers. Today's guest is someone I'm excited to connect with. We've just been chatting a little bit and I feel like this conversation can go one of many ways. But I'd just like to warmly welcome you to the Balance Theory. Nadia, warm welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. You piqued my interest in many different areas. You're a powerhouse entrepreneur. You're also a mum of 4. And so there's so much we can dive into. But where I really want to start, and what I've loved about having this show, is really understanding people behind their titles, behind what they do, behind these labels we kind of give them. Because I find it really interesting to understand their mindset that's helped them get to where they need to be. So the first question I have for you is, you were named one of Forbes's 100 most powerful women in the Middle East. I want to ask you, what does success mean to you?
Ooh, how long? Okay, success. Look, I think success for me has evolved, obviously, over the years. I think, you know, when you're younger, you're looking for that external validation or a certain number or the title or those labels. But I think today I would say it's about like that internal congruence, to have like, you know, who I am, what I believe in, and how I like move through life being in harmony. That really feels like peaceful and in flow to me. So that, I think also because I struggled, I think the reason that's so important to me is, you know, being half Emirati, half English. I think growing up, I had a lot of like imposter syndrome feelings. I mean, I think most people do anyway, but I think now, like, feeling like I've come into my own and everything is just like who I am, what I say, what I do is all like in alignment. That feels really like successful because it brings me peace. And I think also success is about being happy. For me, happiness, my husband says I'm a connection junkie, which I am. You know, happiness is connection. And for me, like, when I'm really connecting to my team at work, my tribe, when I'm connecting to myself, like, or when I'm like building communities that build connection, like it's that really brings me happiness as well.
Yeah, that inner peace is often something we can't quantify.
Yeah.
And it's something, you know, when we at large talk about success, it's often numbers or awards or how much money we've made or how many things we've done. And so what I've found a lot with a lot of the women I've had on the show is we do always gravitate towards this inner peace kind of alignment, definition of success. But you do feel that friction with the, I guess, more traditional ways of looking at success or measured ways of looking at success. Do you still feel that inner conflict, like, or did it take time for you to move through that?
Again, I know it sounds super cheesy, but like post 40, something radically changed in it's been a journey of unlearning, right? Like through time and thinking about like your belief systems and all of those things. But I finally realized that, you know, you've got to grow to a certain stage to like hold space for what seem to be opposing sides of you or what other people have told you. You know, you can't be spiritual and have lots of money. You can't, you know, be a great mum and be a great entrepreneur, like all those, or, you know, you can't face your shadows and still be like a moral person. You know what I mean? And I think like it takes growth. And I think I've actually reached the point where I feel like that's actually my superpower, is like, you know, whether it's in my business or just who I am and how I hold myself as a person, that I'm like, yeah, I am these crazy opposites. I will rave at a party because I love music till 4 a.m, and I will do breath work, and I will, you know, like I'm a multi-dimensional being, you know. And I think, but that took a lot of, you know, again, not to sound like, oh, she's another one of those talking about inner work, but like just contemplation and really think, like giving yourself time to ask the right questions, you know. Why am I doing this? Is it really bringing me peace? You know, like, because, yeah.
I think that's interesting what you've touched on, like the polarity of, can we be either or? Like it feels like we have to be either or, right? Like we have to choose a lot of the time. And now I'm coming into motherhood as well, and I feel this has been top of mind for me as well, because I have tried to create, one thing I haven't told you is I work as a lawyer, but I stepped out of corporate and I've started consulting now. So I specialize in a few key areas, and I have a book of clients that I'm like a fractional in-house counsel for. Right. And that move for me was very strategic, because I wanted to be a very hands-on mum and have flexibility over my time, but I wanted to excel and be mentally challenged in the work I do. Plus I have this podcast, right? So for me to try and make all of that work, I had to really shift that dynamic, but I had to sit with it for a long time and be like, do I have to choose? And it's really got me thinking, do you think that by virtue of us being both, right, and finding a way to do both, we're not really doing either 100%, or because of what you've just said, have you really found a way to feel like you are 100% in everything you do?
Again, I think we're all so like hard on ourselves about like, what is that 100? You know, I think especially women, and we do it to each other and we do it to ourselves. Like, you know, look, again, to be really honest, like people ask me, you know, how do you like? I'm a mom. I'm a new mom. I want to start a business. My first advice is, I know it sounds brutal, but I'm like, don't do it, because, you know, people look at me like, oh, you have everything. I'm like, listen, I've been doing this. By the time I had my first child, my business was in flow. It wasn't in the stage of building a business, right? Startups are brutal. Okay, you've got to go in like, and again, like, you know, then I think to myself, am I perpetuating this struggle mentality? You know, I shouldn't, because sometimes it's not always like that. But you need to be, I think there's a balance of be prepared for the fact that entrepreneurship, you need to bring like a gladiator energy. And you don't want to be in that. And it's not whether you can or you can't, but I just think you don't want to be in that kind of, it's not whether, you know, most women I know have amazing force and power, but you don't want to be in that space when you've had a newborn. You want to be sitting in your feminine. You want everyone to be doting on you. You want to be receiving. So I think, you know, it's a matter of timing changes things, what phase you are in your life, and also defining for yourself what is being a great mom. You know, what is, and it's ebbs and flows. Like, you know, generally I'm in a great place where, you know, my kids go to school. I'm generally there in the afternoons with them. For me, bedtime is like, you know, really, really like precious, because, you know, you'll see they decompress, and that's where a lot of emotion comes out and you kind of connect and stuff. So it's a little ritual that for me is like nothing's happening there. But, you know, there are weeks where, you know, deliveries of a project are coming and I'm not so present as a mom. And there were times where I would beat myself up about it. But then, you know, there are weeks where I'm like to my team, you guys got this. So it's about what you're comfortable with. I think it's really important, again, asking the right questions, you know, just finding that. But again, like, you know, people are like, how you balance everything. And I said to them, look, right now, balance to me looks like time with family, and time at work, because I feel really, I've got fire in my belly about what I'm doing. So I miss my friends because I don't have enough time to socialize. I miss that like girl support system. I mean, I do have the girls that just, you know, they're like, oh, screw it, Nadia, we know you don't have time. We're like coming over and we're going to have like half an hour breakfast with you before you go to, you know, so, you know, my true friends like make time, but something's always got to give and you've got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's definitely not this, you know, picture perfect equilibrium. And the title of the show is called The Balance Theory. And the whole idea behind it is balance is not, because before I started it, I used to really struggle with like guilt and overwhelm. I felt like I was trying to do everything and doing nothing at the same time. It was this constant feeling of just like I was running on the spot and moving nowhere.
Yeah.
And so a big reason I started this show was because I was really interested in what balance means to different people. And it's not only that it's different between you and I, it's actually different even for me at different stages in my life.
Absolutely.
And so already imprinting that in your head as a shifting concept, bless you, that's, you know, flexible and it grows with you, I think is really important. So I'm glad you kind of shared the journey for you. You spoke about how you had to unlearn a lot. And I always find this a really interesting area to go a bit deeper in, because often we're just like, oh, what are all the things you've learned? What have you done to get to this point? And often what's unmasked is the things you had to let go of or unlearn for you in your personal growth, right?
Yeah.
And to get to the Nadia that's sitting in front of me today that's relaxed about, you know, not being at work 100% one week and then being a mum 100% the other week and being in alignment, right? Because I think you have to let go of that pressure to actually be in flow.
Yeah.
What did it take for you to get there? What did you have to let go of?
One of the like biggest ones for me was people pleasing equals them loving me equals me being happy, because I'm a connection junkie and I'm all about like, you know, I want to like be with people, go deep with people. Like that for me is happiness. And, you know, I equated that connection or love or whatever you want to label it with me being, you know, doing something for them. That was a huge one for me because I realized I was really depleted. So whether it was, you know, for my parent, like my family or my friend, like it was, I realized, like I remember sitting one day and thinking, oh my God, like a lot of my relationships are depleting me, you know, like,
were they one-sided?
And why? Yeah, a lot. You know, okay, I don't want to say like fully one-sided, but definitely lopsided. And it wasn't any fault of any of these. Like these people were all beautiful people. You know, my mum loves me to bits, but I had created these, you know, patterns where, you know, my mum wouldn't be able to function without me doing everything for her, when that was not true at all. Or my dad, or, you know, it was when I actually just, you know, slowed down, you know, I was really exhausted. I wasn't feeling very well. And I was like, oh my God, like I've really got to put back, I've got to learn to say no. I can't even like saying no. And it was really weird because like for me, the people that I didn't care about or that were less of a face at work or whatever, I was able to do it. But if I felt any emotional connection to you, I'd literally
choke up.
Say no. So that was a massive, you know, I read all these books about like learning to say no and like starting practicing saying no to like really little things and growing. And it was literally like building a muscle, I would say. And now I, again, like, you know, do I have it absolutely right? No, but I definitely have much stronger boundaries. So that was a really big one. And I think, you know, once you have boundaries, you can start designing. You have the time to design the life that is in flow.
Because,
you know,
the energy you would have spent giving to everyone else, you can invest in yourself.
That was a big one. And then I would say also this whole concept of like being productive also equals worth, you know?
Yes.
And again, surprise, you know, everything also like I was told I wasn't able to have children, actually. So we'd been married for a year. And, you know, we weren't like, it wasn't like a massive rush, but, you know, you get to a year and you're like, okay, let's just go and have a check and make sure everything's okay. And I remember sitting in the hospital, in the doctor's clinic, actually. And he said, look, you know, your chances are really, really low. And even if you do have IVF, even then it's really low. And I just sat there and I was like, whoa, you know, that's a lot of information to process. And, you know, that actually propelled this whole journey that I've gone on, you know, what is feminine energy? What is it to be fertile and receive life, right? Like, and I realized that, you know, and of course I checked all the physical and the hormones and everything, but I think for me, you know, I was meditating a lot at the time. And so, you know, these messages were kind of coming to me, and I realized there was this inner knowing or inner voice saying that that's where your work, that's your blockage, like forget everything else, like you are so in your masculine, you know, that like you've got to do and you've got to prove, and like you can't even receive a compliment, Nadia. Like, how are you going to receive a baby?
Wow.
You know? And that really, like, I did a lot of like, just, you know, people ask me and I'm like, just receive a compliment. You know, when I talk about fertility issues, I'm like, receive a compliment, you know, happily, like get someone to make you tea, like sitting in your feminine, and they're like, well, does that mean we don't do anything? I was like, no, but it's just about, you know, powerful women like summon things into their life. It's not about push. And yes, can you do it? Absolutely. I can hustle better than any man can, but that doesn't mean, you know, you need to learn to like know these things about yourself. And it's almost like playing with these like mechanics, you know, the female and the male and the yin and the yang, and magic can really happen there. So that was, I would say, also a really big learning for me that came out of crisis, you know.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I have started to, over the years, kind of learn a bit more about feminine and masculine, like very, very similarly to you. And I think because I was trained and kind of came up through the corporate world, the way we're assessed on a daily basis, right? It's based off very much a masculine way of working, which is the energy resets every 24 hours.
Yes.
It's not appreciating and honoring the female, let's say,
cycles.
Average 28-day ebb and flow of energy.
Yeah.
So when it comes to falling pregnant, this is really interesting. So you're saying you believe that because you were so in your masculine energy that you
I was so in my masculine. I was all about the push. My adrenals were exhausted. Like, you know, you're in Chinese medicine, for example, your adrenals, your kidneys, like I was depleted. Now, if you're coming from that space, yes, they can give you hormone, you know, they can give you stuff to stimulate your ovaries, but you're just masking
the real issue.
Right? The real issue that, like, you know, just calming down. You know, I love the sea. I love the sun. Like just going for a sunset swim and, you know, having a dance and listening to some music, like that I think did so much for me.
Yeah.
You know?
What was the journey from like you being told that it's going to be very difficult for you to have kids, even with IVF, to then you falling pregnant? Like, can you maybe share something? Just some things that really changed.
It actually, ironically, I went back into that doctor's clinic, not because I was upset with him, just because I felt like I needed to share.
Yeah.
But you know, I actually fell pregnant like 5 months later.
Wow.
And my husband was really, you know, it wasn't fair because he was really panicked and he was like, you know, let's just go to New York and, you know, do the IVF. And not that there's anything wrong with that at all. But I was like, you know, I just need to give myself some time to figure out what's going on. You know, he said that I had low egg reserve, which I did, obviously from a physical, I depleted myself, you know. but you don't need that. You need that one, you don't need that much anyway. So like when they say these things to you, it can sound a lot scarier than it actually is. And thankfully I'm someone that likes to like take things into my own hands.
And quick side note from me, you have to remember that everything is a business at the end of the day too. Just take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did I do? I actually, I read a book called Spirit Babies, which was really beautiful. And it's about how like, you become a mother the minute you actually decide, like you're already connecting with the soul. I wrote letters. Sorry, I'm going to get... I wrote letters to like my unborn child. And I decided that like I'm a mum, and then also I started to behave, I started to make the changes. I started thinking like this soul is looking at me and like we've connected and, how am I making space for this soul? Like if I'm working crazy hours, am I making space for this soul? Like would they look and be like, yeah, my mum's ready for me.
It's time for me to come.
Yeah. So I did a lot of that. Like I held myself to that bar of like, I'm a mum today. I think I also did quite a lot of work around like healing my relationship with my mother. Whether it was, actually talking to her or just processing my emotions, and again, like being in my feminine, finding joy in things, being a bit more girly, like just... girly can mean whatever like it means for you. And just like again like being disciplined about just reminding myself like what is it to be fertile and happy and all those things, because I think I really lost myself into this proving that I'm as good as every other man out there, or proving that I can do this, or like I had a lot of insecurities.
Yeah. This is so beautiful. I'd love to know, can you just share with us the moment you found out you were pregnant?
Actually I knew before I had the test, and my husband's like, you're a witch. But like we were in Turkey, we were on a boat in Turkey, and I had just, we were watching the sunset, and I just felt this like, it's hard to describe really, but I just had this immense feeling that I was pregnant. And I said to him, listen, you keep talking about a girl, and I really want you to sit here and just say to this soul, whether it's a girl or a boy, you're welcome, and like let's do this together. And my husband, he's a very like alpha male, just thought I was completely insane, but humoured me because he knew how important it was for me. And so he sat there and we did that. And I don't remember like exactly what day it was, but it was a few days before that. Because we were on the boat, we were sailing, and we were not like close to any towns or whatever. So I think it was 3 or 4 days later, we got into Bodrum, into the marina, and I said to the captain, please, will you go and like get a pregnancy test? And my sister was with me, and I went, and and it was positive. And she was like, oh my God, again. And like literally she made me pee on the seat like 4 times. And like I literally just like sat on the floor. I couldn't move. And I was like, oh my God, did we tell Kabir? Because like I was still scared. I had all this fear still in my head, like, with all those doctors saying these things. And I was like, did we tell Kabir? Did we tell Kabir? And she's like, of course we tell Kabir, you're crazy. And then I remember like he came down, and it was just a very intense moment. Yeah,
that's beautiful.
I proceeded to eat a whole cake.
Amazing, celebratory.
Yeah,
no, that's beautiful. I really love the way you tackled that, and the way you used like your self-awareness and reflecting on the way you're actually expending your own energy. I think a lot of the time when we hear about the way people use their mindset or these tools, it can sound very woo-woo, but at the end of the day, you don't realize how powerful it is when you can harness your attention in a certain way.
And that's all it is. It's attention. And, you know, it's really ironic because I don't think anything else would have gotten me to stop living the way I was living. It had to be something as intense of me wanting to be a mum, you know?
It's beautiful to reflect on like the purpose of things in life. I'll share a quick story before I ask you my next question, which is, similar to you, I've been into meditation for quite a few years. 5 years ago, I was in a meditation. I was really deep. And I said this to my husband, who kind of looked at me a bit strangely. I said, I can't tell you how I know this, but I just felt the energy of our baby girl. Like our first baby is going to be a girl. And on his side of the family, it's been boys for 2 generations.
Wow.
They haven't had any girls.
Yeah.
He was adamant our first would be a boy. Anyway, that was 5 years ago. And now by the time this episode will come out, the baby will be here. We've had a girl, and it just felt like this crazy, like I had this inner knowing, and I had that soul connection.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a really beautiful tool for anyone listening, whether you want to be a mum in the next few years or not. If it's on your cards in the future, like if you make that decision, it really guides the way you show up every day, the way you show up for yourself. It's a really nice accountability piece, even if it's in the future, because it helps you start to build that life now. I really like that way of thinking. I haven't really thought about it before. I'd love to know on the business side, right? Because you obviously went through a personal transformation from that doctor's appointment to you falling pregnant, and then you've had subsequent pregnancies after that. How's that changed the way you show up in business?
Ooh.
Because I assume it would have had an impact.
Yeah, it has for sure. I think motherhood, you know, again, I always say, like, you know, even before motherhood, like I was always someone that was interested in exploring, you know, that what is the purpose of life, you know, doing breath work, you know, like I did a lot of spiritual work, like going on retreats and understanding who I am and are we these labels and all of that. But I think, you know, and learn, I love to grow. Like I'm all about like growing and learning, and I would say like motherhood cracks you open. That is like spiritual work, forget it. Like we'll have this discussion again soon. Like motherhood with, you know, with some level of consciousness and energy, you know, focus, I think is the most spiritually awakening work ever there is out there.
No training wheels.
And no training. And I think, you know, it makes you're able to hold more space, if that makes sense. Like you're able to, you know, your child will do something that like aggravates you, and then you're like, okay, and then you get upset, and then you're like, why am I, and I'm making it worse. And then of course every mother wants to be a better mother every day, right? Like it's just the way we're wired. We don't want to upset our child, we don't want to be, and so then you start thinking, spiritual or not, whether you automatically start thinking this way, right? You automatically start thinking, what was that about? Okay, I was annoyed because actually that's a reflection of something I don't like about myself.
Like a trigger.
Right? Yeah, it's a trigger. And so you start facing your own shadows and your own stuff. And then you know, like with everything, the minute you accept it, you make peace with it, right? And on some level, and you grow, and like you just, everything, your heart becomes bigger, you're more accepting, you're less judgmental, because you're literally like, you're like overflowing with love for this person, and you're just so much more accepting. And I think, like, you know, if you imagine like your heart literally like grows, like as a leader, because at the end of the day, what is a business, right? It's a collection of people that have made a collection of promises to other people, you know, like that's what it is. And when you're the leader of that tribe and your heart's growing, you're just able to accept more. Like I was more accepting of my team. I think I created a better connection, like amongst them. I think I led them in a more vulnerable way. Like I remember I was more stoic and more like, this is how a boss is supposed to be. And, you know, again, coming from that space of like, I don't want to be like that boss that they think, oh, she's so emotional and she's a, you know, a lady. But like, when I was more vulnerable and shared more, like everything just, like we just got closer as a team. And yeah, the business, I would say like it propelled my business, because I think at the end of the day, like what do we do as entrepreneurs? We're like, we hold space, we problem solve, like we hold space for other people to problem solve. So the bigger that container is, the easier it is for things to like again, I don't want to sound woo-woo, but again, like alchemize in the way that like you turn a problem into a solution. Like businesses give you a solution to a problem. Like that's what, you know, my superpower, every superpower of every entrepreneur is solving a problem and solving it well, solving it efficiently with a bottom line that's like, you know, and you grow as a company and everyone's happy, and, you know.
Yeah. It's crazy how like vulnerability is perceived, and I'm no stranger to this. Like it's perceived as a weakness, especially in very clinical or like corporate settings. And one thing I have learned, I mean, not in your direct experience, like going through motherhood for you, I assume put you in that trajectory where you, like you've just shared. For me, it was leaving corporate and it was starting my own consulting. But it was this moment where I realized the way I am in my life, the Erica my husband gets, my friends get, my podcast guests get, that was all authentically me. But when I used to go into an office, I would be this like hard shell version of myself. Yeah. So when I moved into consulting, I just started being who I authentically was with my clients. I wouldn't wear a suit because I hate wearing suits and heels. It's not me. Yeah. Still smart casual and appropriate, but not to that extent. I talk about my podcast. It's not something I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk about that at work because I don't want people to think I'm doing anything but work. I talk about how my culture. I've got an Italian heritage. I've got a big family. I'm not afraid for them to know that I'm pregnant and might be out of work for a little bit.
Right.
You know, I was actually very pleasantly surprised that showing up just as I do with my friends in my work had such beautiful rewards. Impact, you know, and people like gravitate and also then they meet you where you're at. You know, I think especially people who have done that work on themselves, they're able to meet you where you're at if they've done that work. Yeah. And it just creates for such a different dynamic. Like I just didn't think that could exist within like the corporate space that I was sitting in.
But, you know, at the end of the day, generally speaking, right, like people that have, again, you know, who've done things, who've created impact, you know, who are managers or whatever, or business owners, or, you know, who you're worried about what they think of you, they're leaving impact. Leaving impact is growth. Like, they've been there. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I know we don't have much time left, but I do have one more question for you, and it's change gear a little bit. Yeah. It's about the education system. Mm-hmm. I know you have your own kind of school and foundation here, which focuses on a very different model than the traditional system. And you've openly kind of questioned the mainstream education model, which I find really interesting and have some aligned thoughts on. I'd love to know, why do you believe that the current education system is failing our children?
You know, again, it's been a journey for me. So when Aylan is 11. So when he was 2 and I was ready to go back to work, like full time, I just started looking at nurseries, and people were like, oh, go to this nursery and, you know, you'd love it. It's whatever, organic or whatever it is. And the Dubai, it actually started from a thought about, not about academics or schools, it's just like social structures. So the Dubai that I grew up in is a very different Dubai that Dubai is today, right? Like Dubai was small, we all knew each other, people from all walks of life, social status, financial status, like it was very mixed. I guess because it was so small, so it didn't, you know,
design,
you know, and I remember like going to this like really good like early years setting, but I remember being in the car park, and I just saw like all these kids coming out of like Maybachs and Rolls Royces. And again, there's absolutely nothing, you know, that's you're successful, you've earned your money, great. But, you know, as a mum, you start questioning like what are the values you're imparting. And one of the big things for me is, you know, like money energy is it's a force, right? So you've got to, in my opinion, you've got to be able to have your own force to like respect that and manage that and whatever. And that comes, you know, like if money's given like easily, it's like giving a really strong power to someone that is not ready. That's my personal opinion. Yeah.
Or like doesn't know how to yield.
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. So I'm like, it's a, you know, good or bad, it's not about, it's just forceful, it's strong. So, you know, that should come at a certain time after, you know, you have a rite of passage or whatever it is. So, you know, I'm looking at like all these kids and, you know, also like some of them, again, the way they were speaking to like the staff, I was like, this isn't the Dubai I grew up in. Like it wasn't like this. And then I looked at the school fees and I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, this is going to exclude the bulk of people. And I was like, you know, so it started like, what is the support system, the surroundings? Who are my kids going to be around, right? Because, you know, the control freak that I am, I'm like, oh my God, like what are the values they're going to learn from? And, you know, they say it takes a village, right? So I just started to think about that. And that evening, a friend of mine was talking about Rudolf Steiner, and I was aware of his work because of his biodynamic farming, where you farm with the lunar cycles. And I didn't know he had thoughts on education. And immediately I read a couple of his books, and I was like, this just sounds like, it just makes sense to me, like how you would introduce things, that life moves at 7-year cycles, that you should, you know, in like the first 7 years should be all about magic of childhood and, you know, play. And then the second 7 years is about like your heart, and you get your feelings, and then you move into your intellect. It just, to me, it was just like, you know, in Islam as well, I grew up a Muslim, I'm a practicing Muslim, like 7 years of that's what we believe to. So it all just like aligned. Fast forward another week, I met someone who was in education, who had started a small Steiner like homeschooling pod, and I was like, come here, let's open a nursery. I got the Waldorf curriculum approved as a nurse in an early years setting. We started, all of a sudden, like there was loads of people like applying, and we just a small villa, like nothing. And I didn't want to make money because, you know, I just wanted to, and I don't, like it's not whatever money goes back into the business. Like I just wanted it to be more accessible. I didn't want to bleed money. Like I wanted it to pay for itself, and everything and we just grew. And then with time, through this that started just as a nursery, you know, these kids started to grow, and the parents were like, listen, we love this. We can't then now transition into mainstream. And then the government actually, I remember the KHDA said to me, look, we're looking at progressive models of education. Like we'll help you, you know, give you some land, like speak to the Knowledge Fund, and we'll, you know. And then of course, I think, you know, what does that model look like? It was a little bit of a battle between me and the regulator, not because, you know, I think they really appreciate the pedagogy of Waldorf or the, you know, ideology, but then rightly so, you know, when you're a regulator of like something so sensitive as children, you have an obligation to make sure you understand what are the learning objectives. You know, if these kids leave your school and need, you know, their dad moves back to England, can they get into, you know, sure. It's a huge responsibility. So that has then like, I looked at many curriculums because, you know, a lot of people think like Waldorf is very like hippy dippy and, you know, not academically rigorous, which is not true, but I'm not going to bore you with that. So we kind of did a blend, and we've mapped like the national curriculum for England learning objectives, but the way and the Waldorf pedagogy. And then the way you get there, I think, just simple things. You go to school, most schools are like 45-minute lesson blocks, right? Maths, English, blah, blah, blah. When you learn as an adult and you go into an immersion for 3 days, everybody knows like that's a far superior way of like the cognition, what you remember is. So we do like a learning block, like a theme over a few weeks. So for example, like ancient civilizations, the Greek, mythology is a block. And then into that, so they're living and breathing that for weeks. And in that, they will do their English learning objectives through those stories, through, public speaking, through a play. They will even, build projects that integrate maths. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't think schools teach you anything about like financial literacy or podcasting as a super, like all these things. And look, lots of changing. It's changing super fast. I think COVID proved to a lot of moms are like, what do they do all day at school? You don't need, you have an individualized AI learning app. You can, they say 2 hours. In 90 minutes, these kids, adapts to them. In 90 minutes a day, they can hit most children, like average, I'm talking, hit whatever standardized test you need to give them, and they're done. 90 minutes, max 2 hours a day. So, okay, what does that mean? What do they do with the rest of their time? What skills, what life skills are we teaching them? Like these kids at my school, they grow their own food from seed. That brings, it's not about, it builds confidence. Yeah, could someone else do it? It's not the point. Like it builds connection to nature. It improves their eating habits because they're so excited to eat what they've grown.
I love that.
And then you can integrate like their heritage. So for me, for my kids, it's really important to me that they, they're only 1/4 now in Marathi, right? But this is home for me. And, things have changed. And how do I bring that, like, so in the farming calendar, we use like an ancient Marathi, like we call it the Durur calendar. So when you do things that are project-based, it's just so much easier to be a bit more flexible. And listen, I don't know. The more I go into this, ironically, I've started a school and we're approved for primary from September, inshallah. But like, the more I get into it, the more I question the whole like
model.
Do we even need schools? We need community, yes. We need mentors, yes. The concept of like micro schools, I think, because a lot of large schools, you can't build community. Even for parents, for mums, it's lonely. So I think there's a lot of questioning for me right now around like, I'm like, why am I'm building, like, I want to do a high school. Do I really want to do a high school? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be an interesting watch this space, and we can probably have another conversation about it in a few years. But I think all in all, the way I kind of see it is school very much prepares you to be a cog in the wheel in corporate. That's how you're on like a very strict deadline. You're taught stuff to regurgitate, to then spit out an exam. There's no critical thinking. It's no life skills. There's no personal development. So for me, I look at now the way the world's changing, the opportunities we have. It's no longer just, I grew up being told, get a safe job, go work in corporate. It's the right thing to do. We don't even know,
like, what is the purpose? Okay, employability. We, like, 80% of the economy is changing. Like, what are we preparing them for? No idea. And then, ChatGPT, ban ChatGPT. No, it's here to stay. You can't ban it. Let's give them the right prompts, So it's... look, there are amazing models out there. There are some amazing schools, like, really wanting to do the right things here. But again, it's a whole system, right? It's not even about the local regulators. It's like, I've spoken to loads of teachers who are wanting to do... Look, you don't get into teaching unless you're inspired. It's not the best paid job in the world, right? So they want to do things, but then they're like, okay, but then our school management wants data, and that data stems from the standardized tests. And so I end up going into this pitfall of teaching to assess, which is not good teaching, right? Because you need to look at this child and bring out their innate abilities. And then you talk to management and you're like, why are you doing this to teachers? And they're like, because I've got to prove my data. And then you talk to like an Ofsted in England, you're like,
It's a system.
why are you obsessed with the data? And I understand from their perspective, they need to analyze somehow. They need some form of making sense of it all.
Yeah.
But then I think we need to just rejig that whole, like, how do you benchmark, you know?
Especially with the knowledge that like the opportunities as adults leaving school, that's changing very rapidly. And I even think like when my daughter is 18 and like what are her options going to be? Is university going to exist?
Yeah,
and
no.
so it's interesting. You can't, it's almost like a chicken and egg thing. Like you can't really, like we should change the system to prepare them. But at the moment, the way the system's built is for something that's on its way out. So I think we're in a very formative time. But I'd love to chat to you further about it maybe in the coming years, because it's a space I'm obviously starting to think about now too.
Yeah.
But Nadia, it's been so nice connecting with you. This won't be the last time we connect for sure, because there's many avenues of alignment and interest of mine that I think we cross over on. But thank you so much for your energy and time today. I really appreciate it.
Made me want another one now.
Yes, let's go number 5.
I need to just stay away from pregnant ladies. My ovaries start hurting.
I won't invite you over then when she's born. Thank you so much.
Thank you.